It was a quiet morning in The Hague, Netherlands, in 1938. Inside a modest hotel room, a man slept soundly, until a faint noise outside his door jolted him awake. Pressing his ear against the door, he caught low, whispering voices, immediately raising his suspicions. Then, cutting through the whispers, a deeper voice uttered a single word. His name. They were after him. Without hesitation, he slipped through a door leading to the balcony, descended into the courtyard using a makeshift rope fashioned from tied bedsheets. Darting across the yard, he scaled a low wall and dropped into a side alley, barely making a sound. As he glanced back towards the hotel, the sight confirmed his fears. The building was surrounded by police. They were hunting the man who had been forging Finnish passports and selling them to desperate Jews seeking escape from Nazi Germany. But he got away, again. This is the story of Algoth Niska, the forgotten smuggler king of Europe. Algoth Niska was born on December 5th, 1888, in Viipuri. He was the youngest child of Ivar Niska, a sea captain, and Hilda Niska, a musician. After his father passed away in 1903, Hilda and her 5 children moved to Helsinki. Niska excelled as an athlete and played football. He was chosen to play on the Finnish football team at the 1912 Summer Olympics in Stockholm. Niska joined his first ship in 1908. When the First World War broke out, he went to the Helsinki Maritime School and graduated the following year. He never got his captain's ticket, only completing a mate's examination. He signed on to ocean-going ships at a young age, traveling with them as far as Cuba. His education and extensive time at sea made Niska an experienced seafarer, who also managed to improve his language skills during his travels abroad. In addition to Finnish and Swedish, he was proficient in German and English. In the years that followed, Finland underwent a period of political upheaval and economic hardship. Amid the instability of the newly independent nation, a sudden shift in national policy presented Niska with an unexpected opportunity: prohibition. In 1919, the Finns banned all liquor with the Prohibition Act. When legal alcoholic beverages were not available, citizens bought their alcohol from the illegal market, most often in the form of strong spirits. Prohibition in Finland gave rise to an unprecedented era of alcohol smuggling, which has also been referred to as the Pirtu era. Niska, as an intelligent man, had bought a warehouse of liquor just before the act came into force. Word got around Helsinki's high society that Niska had liquid refreshments and his supply soon ran out. Niska then bought a boat and began to smuggle liquor from Estonian and German ships that waited outside Finnish territorial waters. He also smuggled some liquor in from Sweden. He became a celebrity of sorts. Tall, well-dressed, and elegant and captivating storyteller, Niska charmed both the underworld and high society. But his notoriety came at a cost: frequent arrests and stints in prison. Yet, even in prison, he was known for his good behavior and earned early releases. In 1932, Finland ended prohibition, and just like that, Niska's lucrative business collapsed. In 1933, he made several transport trips from the Baltic to the Mediterranean. In addition to regular cargo, he also transported weapons and was arrested for arms dealing on January 26, 1935. He managed to escape with a simple warning from the Finnish state police. Despite having made a significant amount of money from smuggling and arms dealing, Niska's money slipped through his fingers like water, ending up in the cash registers of countless restaurants, clubs, and cafes in Helsinki. Then, in 1938, everything changed. In May and June 1938, Niska met two Austrian Jewish businessmen in the Fotzer Cafe in Helsinki, Emanuel Gartenberg and Albert Amtman. Both men had traveled to Finland on business and, although originally from Vienna, were living in Berlin. The conversation of the three men turned to the situation of the Jews in Central Europe. Amtman was very concerned about his father and brothers who still lived in Vienna. Amtman was also becoming concerned about his own situation in Berlin and that of his wife, Maria. In the face of Amtman's distress, Niska would have cut a confident figure. He spoke well, dressed well, and had a knack for portraying himself as a man of influence. Niska gained Amtman's trust and convinced him that he could help. He told Amtman that he was an important man in Finland and worked for the Finnish government. He suggested that he could help Amtman and his Jewish contacts. Over several meetings at Niska's apartment, Niska came up with a plan and told Amtman that he could obtain legal Finnish citizen papers. What Niska actually planned was to forge Finnish passports, but in a way that, at least on the surface, followed official formats and seals. Niska asked the men how many Jewish contacts would need help and if they were wealthy enough to pay him. The two men reassured Niska that the Berlin Jews were quite wealthy and would have no trouble paying him any fees required. Niska was aware of the situation in Europe and of border formalities and legislation. He knew that smuggling Jews across borders could result in them being deported back to Germany. His plan was to move them across borders in a transparent manner, fulfilling the external framework of legality with forged Finnish passports. After the First World War, movement across state borders had become more difficult, with visas being required. In the late 1920s, several European countries entered into a mutual agreement to waive visa requirements. For Finland, these countries included Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, and some others. So Niska knew very well where Jews with Finnish passports could easily travel. At the end of May 1938, Niska took down Maria Amtman's contact information as Albert Amtman had to leave Finland. With Amtman's departure, Niska put his plan into action. He required new people for his scheme and went to work. In June 1938, he received a batch of 10 blank Finnish passports, complete with county seals. With them in hand, Niska sailed for Germany with his partners, arriving in Swinemünde on July 9, 1938, and then traveling to Berlin with a partner named Raphael Jofs. After arriving in Berlin, Niska and Jofs contacted Maria Amtman and went to her residence. 3 of the passport forms had been reserved for the Amtman family relations who had fled to Prague from Vienna. The remaining 7 blank passport forms were not enough for the dozen or so Jews who had gathered at the Amtman residence. These Jews had come prepared with enough money to pay Niska. For Niska, the main concern was getting rid of the passports easily, and this did not seem to be a problem. Niska gathered the names and personal information of the 7 lucky Jews and promised to deliver their new Finnish passports the next day. In return, the Jews paid Niska in cash or valuables. Some Jews paid Niska a few hundred German marks for the passports, while others, particularly in the following months, would pay thousands or even tens of thousands of German marks. The meeting at the Amtman residence had convinced Niska that there was a definite demand for Finnish passports and that he needed more of them, and quickly. While Niska began to forge the Finnish passports, Raphael Jofs, his partner, returned to Helsinki to acquire more blank passport forms. Niska, with his usual flair, made connections to the German underworld and managed to acquire entry and exit stamps and a round seal stamp that was used by the Uusimaa provincial office to stamp the portrait photograph once it was in the passport. After this, he returned to Finland, where he reassured his associates of his financial stability, secured 20 more blank passports, and required a capable assistant. By August 1938, he was back in business, ready for a second trip. Niska left Helsinki for Prague via Stockholm, Copenhagen, and Berlin. During his layover in Berlin, Niska met with Maria Amtman and handed her an envelope which contained forged passports. Given the number of potential customers who had been turned away empty-handed at the first meeting at Amtman residence, it is possible that Niska had taken their photographs and personal information. With the new passport forms, Niska was then able to fulfill the orders. In August, during his time in Europe, Niska forged more passports and sold them forward to anyone who was willing to pay for them. However, by the end of that month, his resources were stretched. The demand for safe passage was high, but blank passports were limited and increasingly difficult to obtain. Niska's movements in September 1938 were quite scattered, with him traveling between Denmark, Netherlands, and Belgium, with occasional forays in Berlin. By late September, Niska sensed that the game was ending, since the authorities began to be aware of the forged Finnish passports circulating through Europe. Niska sold his last 10 passports in October 1938, likely in the Netherlands and Belgium. He may have mailed some of the passports to Germany. At some point in October, Niska learned that one of his partners had been giving information to the state police, allowing the Finnish authorities to identify the mastermind behind the forged Finnish passports circulating in Central Europe. Niska was arrested on November 25, 1939, after he was found in a private residence in Helsinki. His punishment was to jointly reimburse 150 Finnish markka to the state, the value of the stolen passports. He had committed his crimes outside of Finland, and this may be the reason for the light sentence. After all of this, Niska even fought in the Winter War and served in an intelligence role during the Continuation War. In October 1953, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and lost his speech and power of movement. Algoth Niska died on May 28, 1954, in Helsinki at the age of 65. Although Niska and some others claimed he helped the Jews, the fact that he made a lot of money from it doesn't quite match with the idea of pure selflessness. From his first meeting with Amtman and Gardenberg in May 1938, it was clear that helping the Jews would generate income for Niska. He formed a team of assistants who took most of the risks while he reaped most of the rewards. The people Niska helped included doctor, lawyer, factory owner, business owners, wholesaler, deputy director, and attorney. The German authorities estimated that Niska received an average of 6,000 to 7,000 German marks per passport. Amtman and Gardenberg had told Niska that the Berlin Jews had lots of money, and he focused almost exclusively on the wealthiest Jews. In his book, Over Green Borders, Niska constantly emphasized his honest reputation. However, the archival Finnish documents suggest otherwise. In his book, Niska repeatedly states that he does not mean to brag, that he is not the hero, and yet that is exactly how he comes across, the heroic man who selflessly puts himself in danger to save the Jews. He does admit in a few places that his motives were not entirely pure, but that he was also not motivated out of pure greed. Niska was ready for an adventure, one that compensated him. Some say Niska rescued as many as 150 Jews using forged Finnish passports, but in truth, the real number was likely closer to 50. He portrayed himself as a daring rescuer, but the archival evidence paints a more complex picture. While he certainly risked much, he also gained much. His actions were not pure nor entirely selfish. He operated in that murky space between profit and principle. Algoth Niska was a charismatic smuggler, a man who used his skills to enrich himself. Later, he saved dozens of Jews from the hands of Nazi Germany as he sold hope to those who could afford to pay for it. Was he a brave rescuer or a greedy criminal? Probably both, and perhaps that's exactly why his story deserves to be told.